Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. So, confession, I recorded this about a month and a half ago and pretty much procrastinated editing almost 19 hours of footage for all this time. And then I kind of forgot I had this video on pending for a good while until I saw the video folder while cleaning up my desktop. But I finally got around to it and we're here now and I am so excited. So in today's video I am going to take you along with me following the process of making a relief sculpture. I took a 2-week ceramics class at college and this was our assignment for that, and I really enjoyed it and I want to share my process with you. Now, I have worked with clay before. I've used air dry clay, polymer clay and terracotta, but this was my first time using proper ceramics clay. What I'm using here is a stoneware clay. So the first step was making my slab, which is what I am doing here. I kneaded out some soft clay and rolled it out with my makeshift rolling pin, and I used the flat side of a wooden tool to compress the rolled out flat clay. This is important to do on both sides of the slab so that I'm pushing the clay particles together and eliminating any kind of air pockets that may show up. Before I began the actual work, I made some preliminary sketches for my slab that I was going to make. I wanted to do NESSART16, the channel name, play a bit with the typography and also make a sunflower as best as I could. So I did a bunch of sketches and this was one of them, and I went ahead and sort of drew the lines onto the slab using some of the tools. All of this will sort of get lost in the process, but I wanted to have a solid foundation before I started working in 3D, the relief or the embossing process. Anyway, so obviously I started out with the sunflower and I tried something new here. I saw this technique on Instagram and it seemed really cool. Basically, I pushed some soft clay through the mesh of a strainer and scooped it up from the other side. It created these very tiny pieces of clay. It worked really well for the center bit of the flower. It was tricky though. The clay bits were so small they would dry up almost instantly and become like brittle, like sand. Bit of a struggle, but I think I managed it. The whole project as a whole was sort of a learning curve. I was figuring out how to work with my clay as I went along, so my initial approach, I guess, was I placed roughly sized and somewhat measured pieces of clay onto the slab. I scored the top of the slab surface, put some slip on the piece of the clay to be attached, and then I just pressed the two together. The slip and the scoring just helps attach the two pieces of clay really well, and I'm going to be doing that for all the pieces I attach onto my slab. And as you can see, I'm just carving into the design, working from my globs of clay. In the beginning especially, I was still figuring out which tools worked well for me. I tried a bunch of different ones for the carving. I tried one with a sort of bulbous round end, and one with a flat end and a pointed end, and one that was pointed on one side and curved on the other side. Basically, I was just picking up whatever called out to me at the time to chisel away at my pieces of clay. And no doubt it was a little overwhelming because I did not know what I was doing, but spoiler alert, I figured it out by the end. So yeah, we are just chiseling away bit by bit to get to the shape that I like from larger pieces of clay. And as I'm doing my chiseling, I am also brushing over the area with some water to clean up a bit. It makes everything look nice and blended and smooth. It really helped having a few references of sunflowers up while doing this, so I knew roughly at least what I was going for. My brain kind of struggles to think in 3D, so this was good practice. Anyway, now we are moving on to undoubtedly the most fun part of the slab, the typography. Doing the letters just gave me so much joy. I actually had some very big plans for the font and the embellishments. I wanted to do a lot of detail in the lettering, in the N especially. You can probably see as I'm etching out the design, but once I began this part, I kind of realized I bit off more than I could chew. Doing each letter itself was pretty complicated, more than the flower and the other designs. I really did want to do a lot more with this part, but I need to get more skilled at that. But regardless of the tiny setback, the letters were still really fun to do. I had actually used a reference for this for the font as well, but I didn't really end up sticking to it. I just adjusted everything by eye, and I was going to also make more designy details for the rest of the letters as well, but I decided to keep those very simple since I have the very fancy N and the whiny bits around the letters, so yeah. Fun fact, the carving actually feels like I'm carving chocolate. At this point, as I'm carving the clay, it's not completely dry, so it kind of feels like I'm shaving or chopping off bits of chocolates that's been in the freezer. That was an interesting observation, and at some parts the clay actually did even look like chocolate, and I may have been a little tempted to eat it. Anyway, by this time I had sort of figured out which tools really worked for me and my process. I had completely ditched the pottery tools from before, and I was pretty much only using a few tools from my wood carving kit. I've actually used this in the past for woodcut printmaking, so it felt pretty familiar in my hands. It was a good feeling, and I also pulled out one of the tools from my sewing kit as well. It has a very small pointy end, which is very helpful. You'll notice how I'm actually using the tools at certain points. I use my left hand as sort of a pressure guide and movement guide as I'm moving my right hand to do the carving or the shaping. This was actually a technique my printmaking professor taught us to maintain control while we're working and basically not injure ourselves. And I don't know if this is a psychological thing, but I feel a lot more confident working with both my hands in this way. But yeah, once all the letters were done, I sanded them down a bit to get them all to a similar height, because we don't want to take any chances of cracking while firing this thing. So yeah, after sanding down the letters, we move on to the 16, and I am so happy with how this turned out. It just looks so nice and clean and polished, and I think I did a really good job with just the shape of the numbers. I think I really got the hang of it by the time I reached here, so this was a very good confidence boost. Okay, now that all the numbers and letters are done, we can move on to the decorative bits. I wasn't really sure what I was doing with this part. I just decided to wing it a little bit. I just did whatever felt right in the space. I knew I wanted something delicate, so I just expanded off of that idea. I started off with the corner triangle bits. I'm not really sure what they're called, but the idea I had in my head was kind of the moldings seen on wooden doors or walls with really pretty designs in the corners. Obviously, I don't have that level of skill, but I'm pretty happy with what I have here. It was a bit of an experiment, but well, I'm really glad I did that. I think it looks really nice. Moving ahead onto the whiny bits, this was a mildly stress-inducing process. Everything was so delicate to work with. A bit of a shift in my pressure or with my movement while I was carving would ruin whatever I just put down. So to make it a little bit easier for myself, I kind of made sure that my working area was always a little damp. You'll notice I keep going back with my brush and re-wetting it, and I'm mostly working on the whiny bits while they are damp. Mostly. And this really did help. Actually, it made the clay less brittle, so it wouldn't just keep breaking, because I wanted pretty thin lines and I needed my clay to work with me. But even still, I'm really happy with these also. I really like the swooshiness of them. I do wish I had some more of this kind of detail, but I had already been working on this for almost a week at this point, so it was kind of getting to me, and I did kind of just want to be done with it, and because it wasn't just this particular slab, I was working on 2 other slabs as well simultaneously, and as much as I was enjoying the process, my hands were screaming a little bit. They would start to cramp up and I'd have to take breaks like every 45 minutes or so. So yeah, it was getting to me. Anyways, with that done, we begin the process of the final touches. That is laying the border, refining the edges of everything, smoothing out the surface. That's getting rid of any bumps or cracks or things like that would slip. The next few steps in this process would be the bisquing, firing, glazing, all the greenware that I have. But that is for another day. We'd be working with the kiln and everything, so I'd be sure to update you on the progress on my Instagram. I'll be posting the pictures of the final results on there, so you can keep a lookout. There's a link to my account in the description. I also recorded a bit of the process of another relief that I did. The completed carving is already up on my Instagram, so you can check that out as well if you like. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little different from the stuff that I post usually, but I've really been loving ceramics and sculpture lately, so I wanted to share that with you. So yeah, I hope the rest of your day is gorgeous as well, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!